My dear students, let us start our 48th lesson, and our topic is punishment in kindergarten part 3. And today we will be discussing questions and also the poetic devices that the poetess has used in this poem. First, let us start with question number 1. And question number 1 is, explain the phrase "the world is a little more my own." What does she mean by it? So it means that the poetess is that she is a grown up person. She has, as an adult, she has peace and confidence. She is the mistress of her own world. She can do whatever she likes to do. And now, as an adult, it's also that she is not dependent on others as she was in her childhood. So, this is the meaning of the phrase that the world is a little more my own. Question number 2. Who was the blue frocked woman and why did the poet remember her? First, this blue frocked woman was the poetess's teacher. That means she was a woman who wore a blue frock when they had gone on a picnic. And why does the poet remember her? Poet here or poetess, that means Kamala Das, because this woman, that means the teacher, she rebuked, the teacher rebuked or scolded her. Her here refers to the poet. She rebuked or scolded the poetess for not mixing up with other children and playing aloof, because she was playing aloof and enjoying her picnic day in her own way when they had gone on a picnic. And this woman, this teacher, she rebuked the poetess, and that's why our poetess, she remembers her. Question number 3. What hurts more, physical punishment or harsh words? And why? It's usually said that harsh words hurt more than physical punishment. Why? And what is the reason for it? The impact of physical punishment remains for a short period of time, up to the time one feels the pain of that physical punishment, and then after that words it's forgotten. But the harsh words impact the psyche of a person because they inflict the mind of a person and remains in the memory. So their impact is long lasting, and that's why it's said that harsh words hurt more than physical punishment, because as long as they remain in our memory, we keep reminding them, and then again that scene appears in our eyes, again that memory appears before us, and then we again feel that pain. So harsh words are more dangerous than physical punishment, and they hurt more than physical punishment. Question number 4. Why did the other children laugh at the poetess? Its answer is they laughed at her because they saw that the teacher was scolding her, that the teacher was rebuking her. And it said the children, by the poetess in this poem, that they derive pleasure when they saw others in pain. So that way they are funny creatures, because when they see others in pain, they get pleasure out of it. So that way we can say that children are really funny creatures because they derive pleasure when they see others in pain. And this time also, they are poetess, she was in pain and she was crying, and that's why they laughed at her. Her own classmates and her own schoolmates, they laughed at her because they saw her crying. Question number 5. Why do you think the words of the blue frocked woman, that means the poetess's teacher, are muffled, dim now? It's because the poetess is now an adult, and that painful incident happened a long time ago when she was in her kindergarten. That means as a very little girl, that happened in her life. With time, we can say the words of the teacher have become faint, And the laughing faces of her classmates have faded in her memory. And even now, in her adulthood, she does not remember the faces of the classmates who laughed at her very well. So, we can say that time acts as a healer. So, no doubt certain things they remain in our heart, but at least time it dulls some wounds or it acts as a healer. Then certain things they are in our memory, but their impact is not as painful or as sharp as it was that time when it happened. And this is also what happened with our poetess, and that's why the words of the blue frocked woman, the harsh words of her teacher, they are dim now. And also the laughing faces which caused pain, which added to her pain, the laughing faces of her classmates, they have also faded in her memory. Question number 6. How different is the world today to the poet or poetess? That means when she is in her adulthood. As a child, she was very sensitive, but as an adult, she has now confidence and is more mature. So she is not as sensitive as she was in her childhood. And in her childhood, she was dependent on others. Even for her happiness, she was dependent on others. She couldn't choose whatever she likes or dislikes, but as an adult she is independent and she can choose on her own what she likes and dislikes. So the world is different to the poet as today than what it was when she was in her childhood. Question number 7. When was the world a little less her own? It was when she was in her childhood. And why? Because she was dependent on her others. It were always her elders, whether her parents, whether her relatives, or whether her teachers, they would actually take her decision. So she was dependent on others. Question number 8. What has caused the change in the words of the teacher, and laughter of the classmates? It's the time. Because that incident that happened, that painful incident that happened a long time ago. So it's the time that actually caused the change in the words and laughter, because now they are in her memory but very dim and faded. And then it's also the maturity, because now in her adulthood she has become mature and confident, and also she has got that peace of mind. She is, and also experience, because from that incident in her life, that was the first painful incident in her life till her adulthood, she went through so many such experiences, whether they were good experiences or they were bad experiences, whether they were good memories or bad memories. And ultimately she learned one thing, that life is a mixture of pleasure and pain, and it moves on. So it's the time, it's the maturity, confidence and experience that causes the change in the words and also in the laughter. Now coming to the poetic devices or poetic techniques, a blue frocked woman is an example of visual imagery. That means the poetess in this line has used visual imagery. Second, throwing words at me like pots and pans. It's an example of sound imagery. It's as if we are hearing those harsh words. My schoolmate sipping. Again, sip. It reminds us of a particular sound, so it's an example of sound imagery. And then schoolmate sipping sugarcane. It reminds us of a particular taste, the taste of sugarcane. That's very sweet. So it's an example of imagery of taste. They turned and laughed. It's an example of again visual imagery. It reminds us the faces of children when they had turned their heads and they were laughing. So it's an example of visual imagery. Then, and smelled the flowers. So it's imagery of smell or smell imagery, because the fragrance coming from the flowers, it reminds of certain fragrance. So it's imagery of smell. And the pain and the pain. So it's imagery of feel and touch, because pain is also what we feel. The words are muffled now. That means the words, they are harsh words, they are but very dim. So it's sound imagery. The laughing face is only a blur. So the image of faces, it comes to our mind, but it is blurred, it's dim, it's hazy. So it's visual imagery. And then in these lines, when I lay hidden by hedge. So it comes to our mind the image of a, or the picture of a girl who had hidden her face in the dry grass. So it's an example of visual imagery. And then honey colored day, honey colored. So it's actually an adjective, but in poetry we call it as epithet. So here epithet has been used. It's an example of epithet. Honey colored day of peace. Here metaphor has been used because it means a fine, beautiful picnic day. Then steel white sun, again adjective has been used, so it's an example of epithet. And then she says in the last lines, when I lay hidden by a hedge, watching the steel white sun standing lonely in the sky. So in these lines, she is comparing herself with the sun. And what is the common feature between the two? That is loneliness. So it's an example, it's a direct comparison. She is comparing herself with the sun, just like sun was lonely in the sky, and so she was also feeling lonely. So it's an example of simile. So these are the various poetic devices that has been used in this poem. And with this, we ended this topic, we ended this poem, Punishment in Kindergarten. Thank you very much. Have a nice time. Have a great day.